Um, in a state of deep grief and loss following the death of his wife in a car accident, he put poison into some of the chocolates in the box. He had worked as a scientist in medical research and drug development and was now retired and living in a house by the sea. With his scientific reductionist training, he believed that there was no deep meaning to the universe. It was all just randomness and chance, ultimately reducible to atoms and particles in motion. So he was an atheist and did not believe in an afterlife or an immortal soul. The love of his life, Anne, was the one person that made life special, and she was gone forever. Now he would play Russian roulette with poison chocolates. He would close his eyes and choose them at random, not knowing precisely when he would ingest the poison that would kill him. Suddenly he heard the front door slam, and his daughter Kate calling his name. He left his study and went out into the hall to greet Kate. She hugged him and suggested they share a cup of tea and go out for a walk on the sea cliffs. She had been very worried about him and wanted to get him out into the bracing sea air. Wanting to be with his daughter one last time, he suggested they should go out now. Closing the front door, they set off on the short walk to the sea. As they passed Kate's car, a swallow darted by and into the old shed by the house where it had its nest. It had returned again this summer to the same site as last year. In the skies above, swallows manoeuvred acrobatically, hunting on the wing for insects. The sun was climbing into a blue sky, speckled with clouds, promising a mixture of sunshine and showers, a typical Irish summer's day. On the road, a car passed by with GB on the number plate, and Kate thought it could be someone home from England for the holidays or summer tourists. Further on, they met an old man who greeted them with a soft day, thank God. Meanwhile, 93 million miles away, on the surface of the sun, photons of light emerged. After a while, the sky grew noticeably darker. A spattering of raindrops was quickly followed by a heavy summer shower, an emissary from the wild Atlantic offshore. They sought shelter beneath a stand of ash trees. As quickly as it started, the rain stopped, and he noticed Kate's eyes lit up. The Holy Well. Still visited by locals for prayers and healing, she had often been brought there as a child. Excited, she suggested they go there and have a look at it. They passed through the gate into the small field and walked down to the Holy Well. Kate bent down and dipped her fingers into the water and blessed herself. He crouched down looking into the well. The sun came out from behind the clouds, and the photons, having travelled 93 million miles in about 8 minutes, hit the water. He saw a sudden glint of light in the well, and without thinking splashed a bit of the water on his face, but didn't bless himself. He noticed a spider's web nearby, with raindrops glistening in it like dewdrops. He stood up, and it seemed to him that he was now inexplicably more aware of his surroundings, more in the moment. The grief, sense of loss and emotional pain was still with him, but it was no longer all-consuming. They continued on their walk and soon reached the sea cliffs. Looking out, he saw a fishing trawler disappearing in the crest of a wave, and further out on the horizon a container ship and the barely discernible triangular shape of a sailing boat. The sea had a blue hue in contrast to the grey seas of winter. Up ahead he saw a kestrel hovering, hanging there like a punctuation mark in the sky. It suddenly dived down and disappeared from view. He heard the crickets chirp in the grass, and on a nearby cliff he saw some choughs, and remembered how Kate was fascinated by them as a child. Pink thrift grew all along the sea cliffs, and bees and butterflies were busy. It seemed to him that he was immersed in a rite of nature. He chuckled as red day-flying moths bumped into Kate occasionally, and she noticed that his mood had lightened. They continued on and walked down to a small secluded beach known only by the locals. The body of a young shark was washed up on the beach. The grand cycle of life and death was everywhere in nature. The gusting sea breeze surged through his lungs, giving him an appetite. He watched the ebb and flow of the tide on the shoreline. He recalled a science article about how an analogous process happens at the sun's surface with gas and plasma ebbing and flowing in huge convection cells. He suddenly felt a part of that process, part of something much greater, like a lone electron falling into an atom of oxygen, sparkling, reigniting the fires of life, the vital force within him, inextricably connected with everything else and entangled with every other particle in the universe, and everything in a constant state of flux, change, churning and riling like the sun's surface, like that great ocean out there. Energies cycling and transforming into new forms, new potentialities, novelty, matter shape-shifting in an unfolding, co-evolving universe. Life was so transient, so precious, so rare in the universe, the imperative to live. He would live for Kate, he would live for his granddaughter Sarah, and his eternal love for Anne. She was a star in the heavens now. He turned towards Kate, she smiled and he held her in his arms. Tears flowed down his face. After a few moments they parted and intuitively they knew it was time to turn for home. Kate's husband Tom was looking after their young daughter Sarah. Kate laughed and said she had to get back to Sarah before Tom feeds her dog food or puts her in the washing machine. Having let himself down, Tom went to the kitchen to make some tea, and Sarah went off to explore with Sandy, the red setter, in tow. Up the stairs, down the stairs, two best friends in a world of imagination. Ah, Grandad's study. He forgot to shut the door. Creeping in, she looked about in wonder. His photos, his papers, his microscope. Hopping up in a chair, she immediately stuck her hand under the lens, and then she saw the chocolates. Just like her best friend, Sandy joined her on the table. As Sarah reached for the chocolates, Sandy jumped in, knocking the microscope to the floor with a bang and sending papers and chocolates flying. Tom heard the noise and found the dog chomping away at the chocolates, and Sarah standing there like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. The dog ran off, and he quickly put the microscope back on the table, cleared up and binned the chocolates, and put Sarah at the kitchen table, found her some biscuits. On hearing the refuse collection van outside, he quickly put the kitchen bin out for collection. They approached the house and he saw Tom's car and suddenly remembered the chocolates. He frantically rushed in the door and found Sarah sitting safely by the kitchen table having tea and biscuits with Tom. He went into his study to take the chocolates away, but they were not in the room and things were not as he left them. He casually asked Tom if someone had been in his study. Embarrassed, Tom explained what had happened. Kate smiled, and jumping into her arms, Sarah asked where Sandy was. He found Sandy dead on his bedroom floor. He picked her up and sat in a chair. The puppy had been a recent present from Anne to her granddaughter. Reflecting on the day's events, he sat back holding Sandy in his arms. He had left the bedroom radio on this morning. Lyle Watson was being interviewed. The RTE presenter asked Watson, what is this idea of supernature about? Watson said, well, I describe it in my book in the following words. There is a continuous communication not only between living things and their environment, but among all things living in that environment. An intricate web of interaction connects all life into one vast, self-maintaining system. Each part is related to every other part, and we are all part of the whole, part of supernature.